Welcome to Section 5, where we will explore optimizations to improve app performance in Ionic 4. This section covers the following subtopics: how to improve perceived performance using UI skeletons, how to improve list rendering performance using infinite scroll and virtual scroll, followed by different compile options that you can use to create performant builds of your app. Finally, we end Section 5 with a quiz to test your knowledge of the concepts covered. This tutorial video covers how to improve perceived performance using UI skeleton pages. We will be looking at what UI skeletons are, why we use them, and then dive into some code to practically implement skeleton pages in an Ionic 4 app. UI skeletons are also known as skeleton screens, ghost animations, ghost elements, or shell elements. They are usually used in place of loading indicators and act as placeholders for screen content before it actually displays. UI skeletons are a common feature in many modern content-rich applications, especially social networking apps. UI skeletons improve what is known as perceived performance. Naturally, that begs the question, what is perceived performance? Perceived performance is how fast your app feels to the end user. It is influenced by how quickly your app seems to react to user actions, such as clicking to go to a new screen. This is opposed to actual performance, which is how quickly your app actually loads and renders content. Techniques to improve perceived performance, coupled with optimizations for actual performance, is a great way to significantly improve the user experience and take your Ionic 4 apps to the next level. As of version 4.1 of Ionic, we have a special element dedicated to UI skeletons called Ion Skeleton Text. Let's dive into some code and see how we can implement this feature in our apps. In this video, we're going to be making use of the code in Code Bundle in the 5.1 folder. We're going to be working with this code to implement UI skeletons. Now, as you should always do after downloading an Ionic repository from anywhere, we should start by installing the dependencies using the command npm install. So simply type npm install into your command line application and then press enter. You should do this while you're inside the project folder. I have already done so I'm not going to repeat this step. And when the dependencies are installed, simply clear a screen and then open the project using your favorite code editor. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. So with Visual Studio Code, all you need to do is simply type in code and then a period, and then press enter, and that should open your project in Visual Studio Code. So let's go to VS Code now. So when you have the project open in Visual Studio Code, we want to navigate to the folder containing the code for the home page. To do that, we go to Source, App, Home, and we want to be working with home.page.html and home.page.ts. So we'll open these two and then close the panel. We're going to start off in home.page.html. We have a list which is being dynamically generated by the ng4. It's iterating over this items array and then generates the list. This list consists of an avatar and some text under this Ion label. The text has a heading and two paragraphs. Below the list, we have some commented out markup, and the first thing is a spinner. The first thing is this spinner, which will only show while the items array is empty. That is, before the items have been loaded. So that's it for now. Let's check out the TypeScript file. Inside the TypeScript file, we can see that we have this items property, which is being declared, and it's being initialized as an empty array. And in the ng-on-init method, which runs when the page initially loads, we are using the setTimeout function. And the setTimeout function pauses for 2.5 seconds before populating the items array with some text. This simulates a call to an API because of that delay while the data is being fetched over the network. So we will use this to demonstrate how skeleton pages work. Now that we understand the code, we want to run Ionic Serve so that we can preview our app in a web browser. So let's go to the terminal and do that. So we're going to type in Ionic Serve, and this will compile our project and open it in the browser. So our application has loaded in the web browser, and I want it to look a little bit better, so I will press Control Shift and I, or on a Mac, Command Shift and I, and that's going to open our developer tools, and we can be able to select a mobile device interface. So we do that, and you want to make sure you click up here in this toggle device toolbar, and then you'll be able to select your device from here, and we have this nice device frame. So we can see our application here. Let's refresh so that we get a better look. So we see that on the page there is nothing for 2.5 seconds, and then all the list items suddenly appear. So when there's a delay like this, it does not provide a very good user experience, as the user doesn't know what's going on. Is the app loading? Is it stuck? And especially on slower connections, this is a big problem. It definitely needs some improvement. So let's do that by using a loading indicator. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and we want to go to the template file. Back in the template file, we want to uncomment the markup for the spinner. Note that the spinner has this ngIf condition, which means that it will only appear on the screen so long as the items array does not have a length greater than 0. So we've uncommented the code. Let's save and check the browser preview. So back in our browser, we can see that we have a spinner. Let me reload so that we can see it nicely. So here we have our spinner for 2.5 seconds, and then the list is loaded onto the page. So this provides a little bit better user experience, and this is the traditional way of indicating to the user that something is loading in the background. Now, I will demonstrate how you can use UI skeletons to do the same while making it seem like the app is loading faster. Let's head back to the code. Now we're going to comment out the spinner. We have our spinner commented out, and then we want to uncomment the code below the spinner. So here we have a list of Ion items, and that list is enclosed in a div with an ngIf condition. This ngIf makes the div display on the screen only while the items array is empty, i.e., while the data is still loading, just like we did with the spinner. Below that, we have this ng-for loop that will simply loop 7 times. If we go down a little bit more, we have this Ion avatar, and instead of the avatar containing an image, it contains this Ion skeleton text component. This Ion skeleton text will be a placeholder for the image. Further below, we have this Ion label with a heading and paragraph tags, each containing an Ion skeleton text. Note how the Ion skeleton text elements have a style attribute with a width property and a value for the width. This is done so that the UI skeleton generated kind of looks like the final text that is rendered. The H3 will be the shortest, while the paragraphs will be longer in comparison. Just like what we have here. We have our header, which is a little bit small, and a longer paragraph, and then a much longer paragraph, longer than all the others, which is the same thing that we have approximately replicated over here. So that's our code. Let's save it using Control S or Command S on a Mac and preview it in the browser. Upon refreshing, we can see the nice skeleton text animation. This indicates that some data is loading and gives the impression that it loaded almost instantaneously, even though we know from the code that it was 2.5 seconds with or without the UI skeleton.